Welcome, everyone, to our virtual panel, Ethics, Equality, and AI in the Caribbean. My name is Pia Milan Green, and I am a research fellow for the Artificial Intelligence and Equality Initiative of Carnegie Council for Ethics in International Affairs. This initiative seeks to understand the innumerable ways in which artificial intelligence impacts equality, and in response, propose potential mechanisms to ensure the benefits of AI for all people. Today, we have brought together a fantastic group, and I will start quickly by introducing the panelists before we jump into some questions. Ladies first. Our first panelist is Stacey Natasha Russell. Stacey, a native of the Caribbean island of Barbados, has had a 26-year career in journalism and media communications in the Caribbean and in the UK, with a passion for promoting awareness of artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, privacy, and data protection. She holds a Bachelor of Social Science in Communication, a Bachelor of Law, and a Master's of Law in Media Law, Policy, and Practice. She currently counsels a cross-section of digital end users in the Caribbean in online safety and security through her association with the UK-based charity Get Safe Online. Our next panelist is Erica Simmons, a global technologist, innovator, catalyst, and philanthropist with Fortune 100 business experience. Erica's professional career has included a successful 25 years in the enterprise software technology industry, holding strategic roles for Oracle Corporation, Expedia, and one of the world's largest engineering companies, Siemens AG. Today, she is the executive director for Jamaica's fourth Industrial Revolution Technology R&D Center, located at the Caribbean Maritime University in Kingston, Jamaica. She is also involved with the IEEE, one of the world's largest professional technical associations and standard-setting bodies, where she serves as the 2021 chairwoman of the IEEE Jamaica. Lastly, we have Cordell Green. Cordell Green is an attorney at law, a former Assistant Attorney General of Jamaica, and a former broadcaster. He is currently the executive director of the Broadcasting Commission, which regulates radio, television, and cable in Jamaica. Cordell is also the vice chairman of the International Bureau for UNESCO's Information for All program and chairman of the Working Group on Information Accessibility. His other affiliations include being a member of the Advisory Council for the Carnegie AI and Equality Initiative, and he is the commissioner of the Jamaica National Commission for UNESCO. Cordell holds a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Law, a Master's of Law degree with distinction, a Master of Business Administration, and is an alumnus of the Harvard Kennedy School Executive Education Program, as well as a Chevening Scholar. Welcome. And Cordell, I think we will start with you. Some persons consider artificial intelligence to be beyond the reach of developing nations, in particular Caribbean islands. How would you respond to such an assumption?
Well, first of all, Pia Milan, thank you very much for your kind introduction. Thanks to the Carnegie AI Equality Initiative for having us here. And may I put on the record that there is clearly a gender imbalance, but I have absolutely no complaints. I love it, and I love being a minority. Now, to your question, I think it is not only a dangerous assumption to say the Caribbean and developing countries are not ready to grasp AI. It is flatly wrong. First of all, speaking for the Caribbean, Caribbean people are early technology adopters. So technology is widely diffused in the region. AI will be no different. The question is whether we will only be the consumers or the innovators. And we are naturally innovative people. And I know for a fact that we have very impressive technology innovators who are doing great work. I mean, I just discovered one who is Eldon Marks in Guyana, who is coming very soon with a game changer to chatbot bot experience. Now, the weakness is that there is no Caribbean Silicon Valley to take our innovations to the next level. So we need to rethink our development priorities and strategies, both from the point of view of what we set aside in our national budgets for research and development, and more importantly, or as importantly, what our developmental partners choose to prioritize when they give us developmental aid. I find it very odd that with all the revolution that is taking place, when you look at the assistance being given to developing countries, such as Jamaica, capacity to harness exponential technologies such as artificial intelligence does not loom very large. I find something inherently inequitable and flawed in the notion of development that is crafted for our region by ourselves and by our partners. So my point is that the question is not whether AI is beyond the grasp of Caribbean people. It simply cannot be. Caribbean cannot afford to miss this wave of development. But I call for an international framework which is equitable. And there is no question in my mind that the existing global trade, human rights, multilateral framework within which this general purpose technology is operating is not stacked in favor of the Caribbean. We have a lot of deconstruction to do there. So I'll pause there and see whether my colleagues have anything to say on this, and then I might have something else to add.
Well, I'll jump in and totally support what you have said, Cordell. And the research that we've completed over the last few months have validated that. We know that there's exponential technology on the market. We know we have developmental challenges here in the Caribbean that we are trying to overcome. And you're right, it's been interesting. We've not found a lot of the technologies and the solutions focused on our real developmental challenges. So I would agree with you that, and part of that is maybe we need to become more active in the community, because that was another thing that we noticed. There's not a lot of activity, even on the global stage, from the Caribbean when we're dealing with artificial intelligence. For example, in the standards bodies, we talked about the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, who is a large standard setting body. There are some initiatives that are setting standards for ethics in product design. And when I looked on that group, there's no representation from the Caribbean. So of course I've inserted myself on the group now, so that we can at least have a talk. At least there's a conduit to take the information that's happening at the global stage and to bring it here to the Caribbean. Then we've got to get a lot more interested in what's going on. We've got to get a lot more educated on the possibilities of these technologies. So that's what I would add. I'm agreeing with you, and I think it's a two-way street. We have to demand that we get a seat at the table, and we got to bring our seat sometime and pull it up. And then we also have to be interested here in the Caribbean on solving problems, on embracing the technology and the digital transformation that's happening around the world. How do we bring that to the region is what we have to focus on.
Now, one positive thing I'll add, Pia, is that there is now a very important global conversation taking place within UNESCO on the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. This is happening at the same time the EU is promulgating its AI Act and the IEEE and others are developing standards. I am very pleased to say that in that global debate, there's a very strong Caribbean voice, particularly Jamaica, Cuba, Grenada, and St. Lucia, being rule makers and not just rule takers. And I should mention as well something that both Erica and Stacey are very familiar with because they were key contributors. The Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, in partnership with UNESCO, launched the Caribbean Artificial Intelligence Initiative, which has resulted in the crafting of a Caribbean artificial intelligence policy brief. So we are taking AI seriously. We're not just sitting by as observers of global policy. We're working to influence it, but clearly, as Erica said, there is more to be done. But we are definitely not a set of people who see AI as beyond our grasp, even if others are thinking that way, based on past experience when we really have not influenced as significantly as we should global development, which is very odd because the Caribbean has a global cultural and intellectual footprint that bears no relation to our size and economic ranking. 4 global laureates, when the Rhodes Scholarship had to celebrate its centenary, one of the 4 persons they could find globally to represent the intellect and ethics of the Rhodes Scholarship was the late Professor Rex Nettleford. And we have gifted the world with Rastafari, reggae music, one of the greatest acoustic instruments of the 20th century, the steel pan from Trinidad and Tobago. So there's no question at all that in the realm of innovation, we should be upfront. That's an anomaly that has to be corrected, and the primary responsibility rests with Caribbean people. That's why we have developed the Caribbean AI Initiative. And hopefully it will be promulgated and we will take our rightful place and ride the AI rising tide that is to lift all ships.
I am definitely agreeing with you, Cardell, and Erica. And you know, Cardell, what you just said there about us pulling ourselves up. Erica, what you said earlier about us not waiting to be called to the table, but taking ourselves to the table. That is what I would really like to see a lot more of in the Caribbean in relation to artificial intelligence and the use of technology generally. And I think that it really has to start in the schools. We really have to have grassroots programs to reach our young people, for the young people within homes and families and communities to be then educating the older ones that, you know, tiptoe around the progression in our use of technology globally. Those are the things that I'm passionate on the street. How do we develop industries here so that we don't typically go to school to become a lawyer or a doctor or a nurse or other trades, but what are we actually doing to incorporate in the fabric of our education and our industries artificial intelligence?
I think those are salient points, and I believe they underscore the very purpose of our panel, which is to bring increased visibility to the field of AI in the Caribbean. So thank you all for that. And Erica, as I understand it, you just worked on the UNESCO Caribbean AI policy roadmap. Can you share with us a little bit about what you learned from that experience?
Yes, and it was very exciting to be a part of that experience, Pia Milan, and to really develop my understanding and help the region and all of us to develop our understanding of where we are in the world in terms of our AI adoption, our use, our education. And I'll just mention a few learnings along the way. I've mentioned one before, that we definitely are experiencing AI on a daily basis here in the Caribbean, just because the technologies are being deployed on our cell phones. We're interacting with Netflix and Spotify and all of those products that we interact with on a daily basis. Citizens are interacting with AI. What we are not doing, though, is the development work, working on solutions for AI. Not a lot of companies. I think Eldon Marks is one of those people who has a company focused on AI. But when you look at the region, we're not very focused on it as a product offering, right? The second thing that we noticed is the education, as Stacy just talked about, the awareness. Now, I want to congratulate Cordell and everything that they have done at the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica. They're probably one of the countries that are out front in the evangelism of AI, educating the citizens on the possibilities available. So good work for the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, but we definitely need to see the other countries take up media and information literacy regarding artificial intelligence. So we're not seeing a lot. Maybe some of you all can adopt the best practices that are going on in Jamaica with the Broadcasting Commission. Third big point, Pia Milan, is just really the lack of information on the topic from a research perspective. So looking for researchers, we have wonderful universities in the region, as Cordell said, scholars across all kinds of topics, but not a lot of research in the area of artificial intelligence, in even the areas where we could use it for benefit, like our climate change issues that we have. How do we apply the technology to assist us with prediction, or even after a hurricane comes, how do we marshal forces to be able to respond in a resilient manner? So the data is not there. So we have to start increasing more in the university level, implementing and talking about it and writing about it. There were less than 10 academic papers written in this area in the region. So most of the research that we were doing with the paper really was outside of the region, seeing what the best practices were, what's happening in the other parts of the world, and trying to see how we were going to do it here in Jamaica. Another profound point that I would like to make is the fact that we don't really have a coordinated approach to artificial intelligence and even general technologies in the region, right? We're taking it island by island, and we are trying to go it alone and individually. And obviously, we're too small. It's not a scalable approach. So we need to see how we're going to collaborate a lot more across our islands to be able to really make something out of artificial intelligence and the opportunity ahead. We have to invest, though, Pia, because to be honest, we don't have the infrastructure that's needed to support artificial intelligence in the region. And really, we need processing power in the form of GPUs. We need cloud offerings located in the region, not in other places. So our region, our countries in the region should really look at coming together to see how we're going to build the infrastructure that will form the foundation for building other solutions on top of it. But we can't really be in the game unless we have those technologies resident in the region. And those were just some of the findings. I think we have a very exciting opportunity for us in some of our industry sectors, such as tourism. Tourism and artificial intelligence would be a great specialization for us in the region. We have the domain expertise here, right? Everybody knows it's a great place to come and visit. How do we take that domain expertise about tourism, join it with this general purpose technology, and become a leader in those types of solutions for the market? So if people want to come up with technology, AI-based technology products, or they want those solutions, they should be coming to our region, right? We know the product, we know tourism. So how do we support those industries that we're already in with this technology, with something that we talked about in the paper? And then how do we look at new sectors that we can really tackle? Like the esports, that was a big one, right? We are really great in the physical realm in terms of sporting. Everybody knows we've got the fastest man in the world and the fastest woman in the world, right? So we know something about that. So how do we take something like a new sort of spin, esporting, and take our domain knowledge and then transform it into a new industry sector? Because remember, we're going after wealth generation here in our region. So we have to go after the new. It's better possibilities for us to generate wealth when we're looking at new sectors. So I was just really thrilled to be a part of the research team and really bolstering up my knowledge in this area of artificial intelligence in the Caribbean. I'm extremely encouraged, though, Pia, for all the challenges that we have and we have had. I think the research showed that we have great possibility. We have wonderful talent in the region. And as Cordell said, if we can get some more investment to bolster up our education, like Stacy said, we'll be in we'll be in a great position. So we need to really look at the positive part of this and try to go for it.
I think, Erica, just hearing you talk gets me excited about the possibilities. For me, one of the shocking things that came out of that whole process of engagement was a snap poll of stakeholders, which revealed, and it certainly shocked me, that only 12% of businesses in the Caribbean were using AI, and that we had low adoption even among large digital leaders in the region. Now, it wasn't a scientific poll, but coming out of a meeting of private sector, public sector, and AI engaged individuals, I didn't realize that we had such a weak base on which to build a regional offensive. So I'm just underscoring here in this discussion the need for urgent action at the policy level and at the business level and at the investment level, because that at 12% engagement, and largely that would be in the predictable areas, the financial sector, chatbots for customer service and so on. That's not very impressive. And I'm hoping that it is because we're not doing adequate research, which explains that low number, and that when we start to dig deeper, we'll have a better profile in the AI use in business in particular.
Yeah, and I just want to follow up. Remember, we also heard from Dr. Henkel Valentine, who told us about the research he was doing with prostate cancer cell lines in the Caribbean, and that he was using artificial intelligence to do that. So it is a beacon that we have the capability, we have the medical expertise, and I also think the healthcare sector is a wonderful sector for us to go into. And I just want to say, COVID-19 has had a significant impact on us in the region, but really what it has done as well is it has advanced the digital transformation. So even over the last year, we've seen significant improvements in the banking sector and our ability to interact there. A lot of people are going online now. We're able to pay for things using digital applications. So we're at the beginning, I do believe, of a transformation of our region, if only we can believe, and if only we can push towards that direction. So the businesses have to definitely be more in tune with using this technology, because it's for efficiency. We're talking about cost savings, efficiency, more revenue We need our governments to make sure that they have policies in place to support that, right? Because businesses are going to be motivated by incentives. And then we need our education sector to get involved at all levels, from our primary school level, so the kids can understand that when they are online, they are interacting with AI. And AI is learning about them. And so they can monitor and have their behaviors be appropriate for the environment, all the way up into our research and development universities implementing it to find problems. So those were some things also that came out in the study. We're doing great things. We just need to accelerate it now.
Right. Thank you so much, Erica. Fantastic points. And I'm actually going to come back in a little while to that point that you made about a collaborative effort in the Caribbean. So what we're hearing is that next purpose technology has already started to and will disrupt, right, all of the sectors in the Caribbean. Our approach to manufacturing, content creation, consumption of content, agriculture, the creative industries. So, Stacey, as we discuss these policy roadmaps that we've started to create, how do you feel that the Caribbean people will view the ethics of using artificial intelligence generally? What would the ordinary man's response be to that?
You know, it's interesting that you're asking about a general context. I always find it so much easier when we can relate to a particular example, a particular sector, a particular way of doing things, and then we can extrapolate it to what it might mean for us in general terms. And when I was really considering this forum and the equality aspect of it, I started to think about an area that will touch on the lives of each and every one of us. And that is crime, that is policing, that is, keeping our societies safe. It is about, what our governments will do. Here we're talking about industry, but the government really has a big role to play in all of this in terms of regulation and in terms of leading the way in certain departments. And I think policing is one area that I can definitely focus on in terms of giving an example of how we can be affected in other areas of our lives. And in looking at this example, I'm not here to consider what legislation or legal procedures
I think we're having some connection issues with
policing and the conduct of police officers, right? The acts, the ethics, the right standard in the Caribbean. Is that better now?
Stacey, could you repeat a little bit of that for me? Yes, I think it's a little better now.
Okay, I was saying that it is about the ethics, the rightness, the moral principles as we understand them in the Caribbean, of incorporating these various computer systems that are programmed to perform tasks into the fabric of law enforcement. And it is generally agreed that the use of AI in policing is intended to make forces more efficient, more effective as they strive to keep our society safer. For example, automated monitoring, like the use of CCTV that a lot of us might not like, wanting to have, our public persona captured when we're moving around our daily lives, but it's there for a purpose in case anything goes wrong. We might be the law-abiding citizens, but then there might be others out there who are not doing the right thing. And then, of course, when officers wearing their body cameras can capture what actually happens when they're interacting with members of the public. That's, an example of using artificial intelligence in policing for the benefit of the masses. And once it is done and executed in a way that is responsible, I would say that yes, it's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. It's the ethical thing to do, to ensure that we're all kept safe, to ensure that officers are not abusing their powers. And AI, again, it can be used for the better in terms of reducing the use of paperwork for officers, to make their work more productive, processing big chunks of data, like those from suspects, from their devices in digital crime. And somewhat controversially, being able to predict who will commit crimes in the future by using arrest histories and other AI-driven data. And that's something that I can talk a bit more about. For instance, something that comes to mind is an example where, it was in 2019, late 2019, police officers in Florida, in Pasco County, to be specific, they turned up at a home looking for a teenage boy around 8 p.m. in the night. And they were insisting that they need to check his room, saying that he was a high category criminal and he was being watched by police. But his family knew that he was on probation for one offense that he committed in his life. He was about 14, 15. And, he and his friends, they had stolen some motorized bicycles. But for that reason, having his information about him on file, using that as an example, an AI algorithm actually said to officers that this minor may commit future crimes based on what he had done in the past. And so these are some of the issues that we now have to be considering for the Caribbean, and how ethical it is, because many of us might want to support, predictive policing, as it's called, with this notion that, police can be so proactive in using the technology to crime-proof our societies. But we also have to consider that incorporating this type of AI into Caribbean policing could easily paralyze underprivileged communities in particular. It can lead to greater social unrest than the predicted crime could induce. It could wipe out a young generation that would have no way back from one childhood mistake. This example in Florida, in the United States, indicated that the particular county really had a mandate to utilize the technology in this way. And over 5 years, they had targeted about 1,000 citizens, and 1 in 10 of them were below the age of 18. So these are some of the ethical issues that we are to consider, as we want so much for artificial intelligence to drive what we do and who we are and how we feel and how we operate and how we interact as a people. And there's more that I can talk about. I can go on to talk.
Sorry, no, I just wanted Stacey to just join you on that question of the trust. Before we move on, because that's the elephant that I think needs to be put smack in the middle of all of this and the technological possibilities. We do have a problem in the Caribbean. I don't think we are a minority. It seems to be more global, with a huge trust deficit now in our institutions, particularly government. And you're quite right to signal law enforcement. Too much of our national budgets go to policing and law enforcement, and our judicial system is clearly inefficient. But we are not going to trust these algorithms that are being created and architectured in other places with all kinds of inbuilt biases, having gone through the horrible experience of slavery and colonization and neocolonialism. I think we are right back to where Erica took us. We can't be isolated, but we have to create our own solutions. And in these very sensitive areas, we have to resist technological determinism. Things don't have to be the way they are. They don't have to be designed the way they are designed. And we do not have to take external solutions, which, by the way, I'm not saying you were saying. I'm just joining you in agreeing that we need to address these critical areas and to use the technology. But the approach we take is very important. And I think in areas of solving judicial problems and law enforcement, I am far more comfortable with a Caribbean built and purposed solution than anything that is coming off the shelf. Because that American experience that you just alluded to, I believe is more commonplace in the experience of Black people in the United States of America and can be generalized. So I'm joining you in what the technology portends, but I'm seeing a lot of ethical and policy challenges that we will need to address in a uniquely Caribbean way.
Yes, and go ahead, Erica.
I was just going to say, I would just add to that we have to develop a strategy for the sectors that we do want to implement the technology. The policing, although we have a huge problem, is probably a very, it's going to be an ethically challenging environment for us to work in. And I think that there's probably other low-hanging fruit areas that don't allow the algorithms to make those sort of life and death decisions about us that we could probably implement better in terms of, like you said, making our government more efficient. And I totally agree with you, Stacey. The government sector in the Caribbean has to drive the digital transformation. They really, really do. And from that, then you'll get private sector lobbying on, right? But I do think we have to decide where are we going to work with what technologies, because we can pick a hotbed area such as policing and we can never get off the mark because that area is such a very, contentious area for a lot of reasons. I actually think that there are other low-hanging fruit areas that we could focus on and maybe look a little bit long-term on how we're going to implement AI in those areas of law enforcement and policing. I will like to add, though, on the judicial system, I read today in the newspaper here in Jamaica that we have a backlog of people waiting to even get seen by a judge to get bail on crimes that they are accused of. So maybe in that area, can we use the technology to work through whatever paperwork we need so that we can make our judicial system a little bit stronger? If we wanted to focus, maybe that's an area that wouldn't be as contentious as facial recognition and the policing side of it. Although we need to solve our crime problem, I'm not advocating that we don't.
Yes, Erica and Cordell, I get you 100% what you're saying. I think that though we need to be up for whatever challenges are here. And Erica, you're saying we have a big crime problem in the Caribbean, in so many of our islands. Just yesterday, a wanted man in Barbados was gunned down because he pulled out a gun from, police had to, defend themselves, and he's now dead. So the issues that we do need to consider is the transparency, the trust. It's about being able to balance the benefits and the risks of what we're trying to achieve. And also we have to think about data protection and the masses of information that we're collecting and ensuring that we're not truly infringing on people's right to privacy and so forth. But I wouldn't say that we shouldn't be thinking ahead. I understand about having to start somewhere, but we also have to be thinking ahead so that we can eventually be forging ahead in terms of being on top of our social challenges in the region.
Thank you all. And I think something that I'm hearing a lot is this idea of a Caribbean approach. And Stacey, I'm going to probe on that for a minute. Your Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, she has indicated that in the context of AI, she believes that no one should be left behind, right? But this raises the question of how. How do we achieve this in the Caribbean? And one perspective that I actually came across is a former dean of business at the University of Technology in Jamaica, Professor Paul Golding. And he speaks of a regional integration ecosystem approach to AI development and governance, as opposed to countries responding independently. So Stacey, let me ask you, do you believe that that perspective is the way to achieve Prime Minister Mottley's vision of no one being left behind?
My very short answer is yes. Because we always have strength in numbers, wherever you want to start. If you want to start from the family, you want to start from the community, you want to start with businesses working together, we have to work together as a region to achieve these things, and definitely by making our people the center of what we are going to achieve. We have the CARICOM single market and economy, which I think that we don't particularly call upon with the vigor and vitality with which it was articulated in the treaties of Chaguaramas in terms of achieving real practical goals for our people. But if we are to even look at this pandemic and look at other natural disasters, for instance, the volcanic eruption in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for instance, what's happening with flooding in Guyana, and how, we're understanding that we really do need to band together and to help each other in the region for the good of the people. That is definitely the way to go in relation to implementing strategies, regulation, education, investment, and so forth, where artificial intelligence is concerned.
Yeah, I want to join in and support that point of view, and to emphasize in particular data. I really think if we don't emerge as a data block, we are going to be very much insignificant in this domain. And that's one of the things I particularly liked about the process that led to the Caribbean AI roadmap, because this has been emphasized and reflected in the roadmap, that the region's most valuable renewable resources is human creativity in the form of thought data and cultural data. And I personally think that is precisely what is behind the European data protection rules, the GDPR. It's framed as a human rights construct, and I support that entirely. I actually think it is a transatlantic trade tool. The United States of America and China are ahead in terms of the research on the artificial intelligence technology and the deployment of AI solutions, but the oil for AI is data. I think that's what the Europeans recognized. That's what GDPR allows, for the Europeans to protect their oil. And I believe that we're going to have to do the same thing as Caribbean people. Our fortunes are not the same. The extraterritorial reach and impact of their GDPR, we can never even dream of doing that. But even for our own internal use and exploitation, we need to corral Caribbean a thought and cultural data. And I think that is probably what Prime Minister Motley was alluding to, and I entirely support that notion.
Yes, and I think, Erica, if you could talk to what that approach might look like, right? How can we garner the support and the activism of ordinary Caribbean people in policy setting rooms? And then how would that ecosystem approach translate? What would the islands need to do?
Okay, so I just want to say I completely agree with everything that Cordell said, and the data is very, very important. And to that conversation, we've got tons of existing data. We have a wealth of existing data right now that is not in a format that can be used by these AI systems. So we definitely need to get better at the data part of it. We have to understand that we're creating data every day, and we have to become expert at transforming what I would call analog-based data, data that's unstructured, transforming that into a way that we can package it and sell it and license it perhaps. And we've got lots of wealth of data on every island. Every island has someone that's a curator of their national histories and assets and museums and other things. So we have data, we have to become expert at it. But as far as a strategy, here's a thought that we could potentially go with. So I say that we can't be an inch deep and a mile wide. That's what I like to say. Meaning we cannot, every island cannot know everything and cannot have an expertise in all of artificial intelligence, right? So we have 30-something islands in the Caribbean, or however many we want to focus on. We need to divide our islands up and give every island a specialization. For example, there could be one island that's all focused on the ethics of artificial intelligence and really understanding that and being able to give us guidance on solutions and systems from an ethical perspective. We might have another island that is leading the way on our data strategy. We need a data strategy. How are we going to collect this data that we already have? How are we going to package it? How are we going to sell it? How are we going to leverage it in these new systems that we're creating, right? The other thing that we need to do definitely is to make sure that we're looking at our infrastructure again, right? No. Every island cannot get everything that they need to support the AI infrastructure. So, for example, could we go in with a group perspective to procure some resources, some infrastructure that would be deployed in our region? So, for example, and we could spread this out because we know we have hurricane challenges and natural disaster challenges. So we can't have all those resources on one island. So we need to have a network effect where we could spread the resources throughout the islands. Then we can have each island or a cluster of islands, and not to be one, to have a specialization in something related to artificial intelligence, where the whole island from the elementary to the middle to the high schools and universities are focused on becoming very, very expert at that. And that's, I think, hopefully a way to move forward, because this area of artificial intelligence, and remember, artificial intelligence is just one of the technologies that are transforming our future. So we can't know everything about it. So we have to dissect it, assign islands specializations, and have them focus on that. I truly believe that that's probably a way forward. And that speaks to the whole collaborative aspect of it. We can't do it. Each island should not be doing this individually. So I'm thinking that might be a way that we could work together. Let's have each of our islands have specialties, and then we can teach each other, right? So now we can go around and teach each other. So what are you thinking about that, Cordell and Stacy?
Yeah. I'm with
Brilliant.
you. I'm with you 100%, and we're already specialists in one way or another. So that can be quite organic.
Yes, and bringing it under the body of the curriculum secretariat, would really be the way to go. I mean, we already have, various ministers responsible for various things, heads of government in each one of the CARICOM member countries responsible for various areas. There is also a rotation of who is the chairman of CARICOM every 6 months of the year. And definitely, I would say that is the way to start. That is the place to start. We have a framework. We just have to action these things, and we have to be willing to work hard, set goals and timelines to make them happen.
And mobilize the people. Nothing like a crisis to mobilize people. I think if Caribbean people figured out how much of their data is being captured, colonized, commercialized, making big tech companies very rich, you might be surprised at how much Caribbean people would rally behind some of these ideas. Erica's low-hanging fruits, at the very least, creating data, investing in data banks. And we're passionate about these things. So I just wanted to add that yes, the CARICOM structure, but the weakness with the CARICOM structure is I don't believe there's sufficient engagement on the ground. And with a technology such as AI, given its nature and how transversal the effects are, we're a labor-intensive economy, so there are implications for automation and the introduction of artificial intelligence. We definitely need to get the people involved in the discussion and in the solution. And I think that they are ready for it and can help to shape the process.
I really did want to go back to the whole notion of policing as an example of how we employ artificial intelligence, because we have to also think about our women and what part do our female folk in the Caribbean play. What is really meant by equity and diversity when we talk about these issues? How does artificial intelligence affect women, for instance? And we are reading headlines every so often, whether they be here in the region, whether they be from other parts of the world, that women really need help in so many ways. The biggest thing that has been talked about recently is women being harassed, with women being, victims of rape. We had this incident in London where a serving London Metropolitan Police officer, someone who is supposed to protect and serve and reassure, just last week has confessed to abducting a woman and raping her and killing her. And you have just today ministers of government in the UK apologizing and saying that they have failed women in this regard of policing and protecting them whilst it has been on their watch. And just recently in Barbados, you had a woman speaking through her attorney about being manhandled by a police officer who came to complete a search at her home and being verbally abused by him. And I know that It mightn't be one of the short-term issues that we want to go after, but it's fine for us to think futuristically. It's okay for us to think, well, maybe we're not going to achieve this next year or the next 2 years or even the next 5 years, but let's start having a conversation about things to make it happen. And for instance, we can start thinking about how we can use a chat box when police officers are investigating crimes. I mean, Erica was just talking about reading about cases languishing in the courts, but that's where the work starts. You know, if it doesn't come through the chain, come through the channel of investigation, of taking the witness statements and you know, information sharing between the, you know, the two sides and so forth, how far can you get in terms of the court, the case coming before the magistrate or the judge, and the justice being administered?
I want to agree with you, Stacey. I know we have 4 minutes to go, but I need to just say one thing though. I really caution. I mean, I accept the what AI portends and so on. I just don't believe some of these things require technology solutions, or that technology will solve these things. I entirely agree with you that these are serious social issues we're having with how we treat with our women. This is one of the moments when I get back to human centricity. We need to go back to some core principles about who we are as a people, because unfortunately, I think if we don't address those things, some of the very biases and dysfunctionalities that we see playing out in these relations will find their way in whatever technology solutions we devise. So, you know, in short, I see it as a combination, and there's a critical human element aspect to this which needs attention, and that's my takeaway from what I've heard you say. In addition to looking at the technology solutions, we also have to balance it with, remember that we're talking about human beings, and put human beings at the center of whatever developmental architecture we devise around artificial intelligence.
And Pia, could I just add that we're in a perfect position for this, because we are the melting pot of the world here in the Caribbean. We have people that speak multiple languages. We have different climates. We have different backgrounds. We have women, children. So we really have a great position in our cultural diversity here in the region to be able to think really big and strategically about AI and the challenges that we have with AI.
And what a point to end on. Thank you all. Thanks again to our fantastic panelists and to everyone who tuned in today. Before we sign off, a reminder that the full video and transcript of today's panel will be available on Carnegie Council's website at carnegiecouncil.org. Be safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Pia. Thank you, fellow panelists and
thank you very much. Thank you,
Bye from the Caribbean.
And of course, Pia Milan.
Thank you, everybody.
Where's the reggae music?
Yeah, where's our one love? Where's our one love, Pia?